Hello and welcome everybody, I'm Barbarian. This is number 15 of the Dev Diaries for Crusader Kings 3. Today we're going to talk about the martial lifestyle, the last of the lifestyles, and after that we will finally be able to move on and have some, a bit of a different experience with these Dev Diaries. They have been very same-ish, I will admit that, but at the same time, with the last martial lifestyle, we now have a complete overview of the perk trees, and that is of course super cool, because now we actually know what they do and why they do it, and I think we should just jump straight in. Now, this lifestyle Dev Diary, I think we will keep it fairly short, because many of these perks that you can pick are, well, primarily modifier oriented, and I don't think we need to get too deep into that just because it really isn't that important. I can't tell you whether the modifiers to heavy infantry will be good because I haven't seen the combat in action. I have no idea about warfare when it comes to this because we saw some raw numbers, but we don't know what this actually means in relation to Crusader Kings 3's actual gameplay. With that being said, let's just jump straight in. We have three different focuses as always here. We start with a strategy focus, which gives you a pretty decent bonus to martial, then authority, which gives you a smaller bonus to martial, but also control growth. Remember, control growth determines whether you get the maximum amount of levies and taxes from a province that you directly rule. If you have maximum control, then of course you get the most out of it. If you don't, then you don't get the most out of it. I mean, should be fairly obvious, I suppose. Chivalry focus over here, in the meantime, gives you some prowess, so good for duels, good for being a knight in a battle. And it also gives you some attraction opinion, as well as advantage +5. Advantage +5, see, I don't know if +5 is big, if it's small, but I do know that it makes it so that fighting battles will be easier for you. Now, that being said, we will start with the strategist focus here, so you can see all three of them here. They are in the reverse order as they are spoken about in the Dev Diary. The strategist one, then the overseer, so this is essentially authority, and then over here we have chivalry or gallantry. I personally think that in this entire Dev Diary, gallantry is the best of these lifestyles just because it is the most interesting one. It is not just, it's not putting just modifiers in the focus of its focus tree or of its perk tree, and I think that is absolutely amazing when it comes to role-playing, but the others are good. I'm not saying that either of these, authority or strategy, is bad. I'm just saying they are very, very numbers heavy. And let's just jump straight into the strategist tree so that you can see what I'm talking about. Parthian tactics, like cavalry, heavy cavalry, and skirmishers get some bonuses to toughness, pursuit, and damage. Then over here we have envelopment, men-at-arms counter efficiency plus 25%. And then over here, hit and run, retreat losses go down, which is huge. I personally think that is big. If you have a bad battle, for example, you can easier pull out, although I'm not entirely certain. Maybe this even opens up a strategy where you could theoretically, and I'm not entirely sure that this will even happen, but what if you have a very, for example, horse archer heavy army? Of course, first of all, you would take this one over here, the Parthian tactics, and then you go with hit and run, and you literally just initiate fleeing whenever the archer phase, so the initial phase, is over. That could be pretty cool. I don't actually know if that is how it works. Again, we have no idea about the system at work, but I could see it being a big difference. Down here we have organized march, which is essentially the organizer trait. Movement speed plus 15%, heavy infantry screen, pikeman, archer, and skirmisher screen. And then over here, of course, we have engineered for destruction, naval speed plus 25%, and siege weapon effectiveness plus 40%. Let me just approach this from an angle in comparison to CK2, because all of those are numbers that we can't really do much with. We have no idea about it, but this tree clearly is essentially a substitute, at least I believe it is, to the old commander perks, so to the old commander traits. And let me just see if I actually have some commander traits right here in this save game. We have defender here, for example, which makes the defense better, and then heavy infantry leader over here, but it mixes that up with the old system of technology. We don't know properly yet how technology will work, but essentially what you do in CK2, right? You have a lot of fights, you have a lot of wars, you go to war with people, you fight them, and once you have fought them, you just invest that over here, making your infantry permanently better. Now, I generally, I think, like the idea of maybe technology kind of stepping back a bit and having the proficiency of your armies be dependent on your character. Because if you think about it, even more than it already is in CK2, again, in CK2 it's a mix between technology and commander traits, with the commander traits making a huge difference, but same, of course, for the technology. The way I see it, I think it would be nice if technology stepped back a bit, because most of the time, and I think the Swiss are the exception to the rule here, but most of the time, a country fighting a lot of wars did not necessarily mean that that country would then be Portal Dogs out on Switch, Steam, and Android. I guess that's a thing. It does not necessarily guarantee that you were in a situation where all of a sudden we had the perfect army and that would go on for generations, from there on out. It of course is entirely unrealistic that if you fight many wars in 800 and, end up with 6 points in research in a certain area, that then that would carry on literally until 1300 and give you a benefit until then. It is very unrealistic, and I like the idea to move it towards a character focus tree and make it more character relevant, although I'm not entirely sure whether you know, you shouldn't just always pick these focuses because these seem very powerful. There's so many modifiers here that enhance your armies. I think if you go for whatever your army is actually made of, be it horse archers or be it heavy infantry, for example, then you can get a huge benefit from this. Now, whether these modifiers are that huge or not, you know, how technology has an impact on it, I don't know, but this is clearly a substitute for the commander traits, and it seems to me, at least it smells to me, a bit like it also substitutes technology's huge impact that it would have, but, you know, instead of being on a permanent basis, it is just on a character basis. Now, that being said, let's just move further down. I love this one, living off the land, raid speed plus 25%, supply capacity plus 200%, if you want to be a prolific raider, if you want to be a true Viking. I think this is the way to go, and I really like the idea of it, because at the end of the day, this is a modifier that makes it so that you just have more fun raiding, and I mean, raiding is already great fun, right? And it also makes it, of course, so that you can be a bit, you know, behind the enemy lines in a war where you can take out, you know, for example, a church, you just raid that church, and you can take that stuff out of it, even if you don't have a direct supply line connection. Down here then we have sappers, heavy infantry, pikeman, archer, and skirmisher get a particular siege progress speed up. So essentially certain armor, certain units in an army make it so that that army can siege even quicker, regardless of the siege weapon effectiveness. Again, they do have siege weapons now. That is actually a thing. We saw it actually in one of the screenshots very early on as well. If you remember, I think it was like Devdari 2 or 3. I can't exactly remember, but it was one of those. Down here, Bellum Justum, CB cost minus 50%, speeding it up, you know, getting CBs even quicker, and that is of course the very first trait here, so you can dip into this tree and get a very good modifier. But I gotta tell you, in general, I feel like this tree is pretty good, it's just very, very boring. At the end, it gives you a strategist trait, which gives you a boost in both diplomacy and martial, allows you to cross water freely. What exactly that means, I don't know. Does it actually take away the cost for boats? That would be insane. Well, I mean, it wouldn't necessarily be insane depending on the cost of boats, of course, but you know what I mean, right? Like, that is a crazy interesting change. But it also increases the number of dead soldiers your enemy suffers when facing you in battle, which is, I think, the biggest part of this tree. Again, for me personally, this tree is very boring. It is a good tree, don't get me wrong, but it is a tree that I personally wouldn't feel too good about investing just because, well, I mean, it doesn't really do much for a character. Hey, I'm better now. Yes, of course you are, dear character, but it doesn't really change anything in role-playing, for example, but that comes from a very role-playing point of view, of course. Now, let's move on to the Overseer. The Overseer being more focused on, you know, your realm as an inside force, and we're going to start here with strict organization, increased control and county progress gain plus 20%. Imagine being able to read. Pretty good. I mean, of course, you know, the more control you have over your personal counties, the stronger you are against vassals that may rise up against you or may want to rise up against you because your personal levies will be bigger, but also the stronger you are, of course, against external enemies. Serve the Crown, control growth plus 0.3 per month. Also pretty good start. Absolute control enables absolute control for counties. Absolute control means that all of the counties you have full control over will give you 10% more taxes and levies as long as you maintain your iron grip on the populace. Pretty good. And it gets even better because while absolute control is already a pretty good start to something, or rather, you can see here it is the second to last trait actually, so it's not a start, but it is a good finish. But this is pretty good to build up an empire that, you know, is stable, strong and stable, but it goes even further. Let's just skip over hard rule for a second. Enduring hardships. This one is one that works so very well with the absolute control one. Fort level plus 1 and enemy occupations do not lower control. So even if you were to lose some territory in a war, you know, due to occupation, you would be able to immediately return to the strength that you had prior to the war ever starting because your control never actually went down. This is a huge combination that makes it so that you can play in a very different way, where you can let your land get sieged and not really regret it to begin with. Let's move on here to the one that was chronologically meant to be read next. Hard rules, siege progress against revolts plus 50%, independence and liberty faction discontent minus 50. Now what exactly that discontent means, I can't tell you. But I assume that it means, you know, the likelihood of the faction to actually fire the demand, whatever their demand may be. And siege progress against revolts, of course, that is huge. If you really want to get rid of your vassals that, you know, go against you, then this will benefit you greatly. A woman's home or a man's home, depending on who you are. Control territory, defender, advantage plus 5. Pretty decent. But again, yet just, you know, another modifier. Prepared conscription, army maintenance minus 15%, and friendly territory levy reinforcement plus 100%. Big perks if you want to have, you know, essentially permanent war while also keeping your own realm under control. Because it means that, you know, if you go on and you are permanently at war and you have big losses, let's say you lose a war, for example, a crusade maybe, your levy will immediately be reinstated once the war is over because it is just such a huge bonus. Plus 100% reinforcement rate, and it will barely cost you anything to begin with. And then on here we have soldiers of lesser fortune, mercenary hire cost minus 30%. I think this one is good Although we don't know yet what the mercenary system will actually look like in CK3, I hope that it is a bit more roleplay-y, so to speak. You know, I saw an update, I don't know if you guys saw that, but in EU4 what they're going to introduce now is hiring mercenaries in particular provinces. It takes some time to hire them, instead of just, you know, the mercenaries spawning in, or, you know, the old EU4 style there. I think that would be cool. I would like to see that. It is very similar to the Imperator Rome mercenary style hiring, where the mercenaries in Imperator Rome are on the map permanently. I would like to see that in CK3 as well. It's just a cool idea to have them actually as a traveling entity, for example. But whether that will be the case, we do not know yet. So whether the mercenary hire cost, you know, has a big impact or not is something that has yet to be seen. And to top it all off, we have the trait Overseer. It grants you a boost in martial stewardship and control growth factor, so the hold you have over your realm will be cemented for decades to come. Gotta be honest with you, I think those are two decent perk trees. But I also think those are two of the most boring perk trees introduced yet in CK3. But we'll see eventually how they work. You know, you never know. You can't really ever know how they work. I don't know, maybe there will be command trait or commander traits on top of the already existing traits of the strategist focus. Maybe the overseer focus, you know, is in comparison to some of the technology bonuses that you can get for control or whatnot, maybe that is, you know, dwarfed by it. I don't know how these trees really work, seeing as we haven't seen warfare in action, only in numbers in a very early dev diary. Now, let's move on to the interesting part about this dev diary, the gallant. Romans, prowess, and bravery are the marks of a true charmer. This is the tree for those of you who want to focus on the more elegant side of warfare while still giving your war efforts a boost. Let's take a look at this. Knight effectiveness plus 100%. Very cool, because this essentially makes it so that, you know, your knights are more effective in battle. What that actually means, we don't know, but I like the idea of being more character focused instead of being more unit focused. Stalwart leader, prowess plus 4, reduces the risk of commanding armies. It's a good start. It is the starting point of this tree, of course, and I think it is very effective because this makes it so that you know, can go down that route without ever risking your life to that degree that you would otherwise be risking it. Kingsguard, number of knights plus 4. Very cool. Again, I love everything that is more character focused. Never back down. Friendly, fatal casualties minus 20% and advantage plus 5. Then we have Peacemaker, peace acceptance plus 10. I'm very, very, very interested in that because the AI in CK2 usually never surrenders unless there is another war declared against them and they are under pressure and say, hey, I can't win your war anyway, so I might as well surrender right now. Sometimes the AI, you know, if they are peasant rebellions, you just have to strike a single battle. Even if they have many more troops, they will immediately accept a white peace. I've had only one instance where I was at like 38% and the AI was like, I surrender. Usually you have to push them up to at least 80, if not 100% as a whole. The peace acceptance thing sounds very cool. Maybe a move more to EU4 peace acceptance, which essentially relies, you know, on other factors like debt, other wars going on, that sort of stuff, the manpower, you know. We don't know for sure, but I like the idea of peace being something that does not have to be total surrender or total victory when it comes to the requirements to make peace. Now down here we have promising prospects, marriage acceptance for yourself plus 50 and marriage acceptance for your extended family plus 25. Amazing. Very, very nice. So far marriage acceptance is based primarily on the power that you have in CK2 and not really on, you know, the personality that you are, how respected you are, that sort of stuff. And I think it is quite a good move to actually, you know, even if you're a count, if you are a respected count, a count that people know is a very honorable man, and you will probably be able to secure some good alliances because those people, you know, for example, the Duke or the kings that you get the alliances with will just say, hey, yeah, no, this is definitely a good partner. A partner that I can trust is worth more than a more powerful man that I cannot trust. I like the idea. Again, very character focused in this tree. And give me one moment here. Alright, I've returned. Even your own spouse isn't immune to your charms. Spouse opinion plus 50 and skills from spouse counselor tasks plus 25%. Huge fan of this. More involvement again with your spouse, making it so that your governance is more effective. This tree, I really like it in comparison to the other two. And the other two aren't bad, just for the record. I think they are good trees, but not really interesting. This one is all character focused. It is all focused on you and all the people surrounding you instead of just the nameless troops, the faceless troops that are waging your wars. I like the idea of it, and I really like the fact that the spouse becomes more important via this martial tree. Then courtship is probably the most interesting perk in this entire thing. Romance scheme power plus 30%, elope scheme power plus 30%, and the success chance goes up as well. Now what does that actually do? The romance scheme finally lets you enter a chivalric romance with a character, seducing them in a court-approved manner. So instead of going out and being like, ooh, I met you in the kitchen in the dark night. Do you want to have intercourse? You now go to them and, you know, for example, sing them a song, that sort of stuff. I'm very, very excited for this. Actually adding a scheme for an honorable seduction. I really like it. Just imagine a knight pining after his lady, his heart full of longing, neither of them acknowledging the smoldering feelings between them. Now that can be you. If you succeed in this scheme and resist the temptations of the flesh, at least in public, you and your beloved become soulmates, a more powerful version of the lover relationship. I really wonder just how well that can work. I'm very, very excited to do that, you know. To be, for example, a small ruler where you go out and convince the princes of the realm that you serve that you are their soulmate. I think that is very cool because on top of that, you can now also elope. And if you cannot bear to be apart, even though her liege will never approve of a marriage between you, do not fear. I bring you elope, marriage without any pesky relatives or lieges involved. However, in contrast to marriage, your partner actually has to like you for the union to work out, so you still have some work ahead of you. And make sure you're not caught. So essentially, imagine you are the Count of, I don't know, what about the Count of Nordgau? No, that's a duchy. The Duchy of Nordgau, right? And you have the Emperor of the Holy Roman Empire, and he hates you, he dislikes you, but he has a beautiful daughter. So what you start doing is you persuade her that both of you are destined to be a pair, a couple. You do the romance scheme, you know, get this done, and then afterwards the Holy Roman Emperor still says, you are a son of a gun and I will never give you my daughter, and then you say, daughter, why don't we elope? I think this is very, very cool because it is a way to get a marriage, a way to get something done like that we have not had at all in Crusader Kings II. It is a very, very cool way to actually make it so that, you know, it's not just about the physical areas or the physical demands when it comes to seduction, you know, of, hey, I want to have intercourse with you, let's do it, and then we're lovers, but instead you become actual soulmates. I think this is very, very cool. A really great addition. I think this tree is very interesting to me because it makes it so that you, of course, are better as a knight. You know, you can finally be the chivalrous, amazing person that you always wanted to, but you can also go ahead and actually smith alliances and whatnot out of it. You know, get some important bloodlines, for example, although bloodlines, of course, don't exist anymore, but get some important relatives, a claim to fame, for example, a claim to the Holy Roman Empire itself, maybe. You know, that sort of stuff. You can get all of that just by eloping. And nobody even needs to like you for it, except, of course, your spouse. My love, you have told me to be brave, but I cannot contain my fears any longer. What if King Salomon finds out about our plans? Whenever he appears, I go stiff and speechless. It is only a matter of time until he notices. We are running out of time. Please, my dearest Boleslav, make haste. Signed, Jacinta. We will speed up the plans, my dearest, or trust me, everything is under control, or you shouldn't be sending letters then. What I like about this entire event is that it is actually a letter. And what we've seen so far was always, you know, like a background, for example, a feast table, that sort of stuff, and then this person in front of it. But instead, we actually see a letter here, even with a sigil. I hope that these sigils are very dynamic, you know, that is her actual house. I assume that Jacinta is maybe someone like De Vrea or something, I'm not entirely certain. But I like the idea of this, I like the event layout here, and I want to see more of that. This definitely looks way more immersive than, you know, for example, an event that is like just a generic grey brown or grey dark background. Now, that being said, I really like this in general. These schemes make these characters come alive, and these schemes make people more important that don't even hold titles. In this case, the Lady Jacinta. This tree culminates in the gallant trait. It affords you extra monthly prestige, as well as some attraction, opinion, and of course a healthy boost to both martial and prowess. Nothing in particularly special about this. With all this helping you along, neither foe nor maiden will stand a chance. So that's it, both for martial and for our series of dev diaries focusing on lifestyles. We made it through. I hope you found something you're looking forward to exploring and playing around with, and that you're as excited as I am to see what kind of characters you will create with this. Yep, I think while this tree wasn't, or these focus trees weren't the most interesting ones, they were all powerful, and I like that. What CK3 appears to be doing is that all focus trees are very strong, meaning if everything is overpowered, nothing is overpowered. And I really hope that that carries forward. I hope that we see more focus on characters, like with the gallantry tree, you know. I mean, all of the modifiers to armies are nice and all, but they aren't exactly roleplay-y and immersive. That being said, next week we'll delve into interface tooltips and the tutorial, so keep your eyes peeled. What exactly that means, I have no idea. I'm interested to learn about it though. Interface and tooltips, you know, I hope that the interface maybe gets a little revamped to look more like just Middle Ages styled, but we'll see about it. Either way, I'm a big fan of the gallantry tree. I hope so are you, if you are interested in roleplay. If you are interested in not just seducing the body, but also the mind. And beyond that, I want to thank you for watching all of these dev diaries, of course. And I want to thank the members of the channel that are making these videos possible, namely the Barons Aaron Stefan, the Richest T, Snywolf, M.R. Marmello, Thomas, and Lachlan, as well as the Counts Kamelik 2, Shifty, Ixum the Naughty, and Wombat, and last but not least, the absolutely beautiful Dukes, Suspicious Duck, Benedict, Nathan, Knight of Squires, Kenneth, Lexo, Roboman, My Dad Left Me at Arby's, and of course the absolute legends Eric and Aiden. Thank you all so much for supporting the channel, and I will see all of you next week in a dev diary that finally isn't just focus trees. Until then, later, alligator.